of the proposed research project to look at bobcats and SGAs on the island. And so this is their first visit to the island, and so we thought it'd be good for them just to kind of real quick give you an overview of the project, introduce themselves, and then answer any questions you have. So they've got a 5 to 8 minute presentation, but I'm going to have them, if you guys don't mind, introduce yourselves one at a time, and then decide who's going to present.
Hi everyone, my name is Keating. I'm going to be the PhD student on this research project. I'm super excited to be here. South Carolina is such a beautiful state. I drove all the way from California to get here, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know everyone and really hearing your thoughts on our project.
I'm David Jahowski. I'm an associate professor of wildlife ecology at Clemson. I specialize in carnivores, so I study cheetahs in Africa and weasels and skunks and ferrets and things out west. And I do a lot of work here in South Carolina, coyotes, bobcats, and things like that.
I'm Greg Yarrow. I'm professor of wildlife ecology. I've been at Clemson for 33 years, and my area is dealing with human-wildlife conflicts, teaching and research in the past, and also wildlife management and managed systems. I was department chair for 7 years, and but now back into the faculty, and looking forward to working with the town and also with my colleagues here.
Good afternoon. I'm Thomas Rainwater. I'm a biologist with Clemson University. I actually work and live in the Charleston area, but my office is in Georgetown at the Baruch Institute. But I'm a Clemson employee, wildlife biologist. I actually did my master's research here at Kiowa back in the early 90s, and they actually built the ocean course, and we were looking at exposure of birds to pesticides on the Gulf course. And in the last 10 years or so, I've been working with Jim and Aaron on alligators here at Kiowa, so I'm familiar with the island. But I'm now with this great team here, and we're looking forward to working with you guys on the Bobcat project. So we're going to kind of go through this quickly. I think most of you hopefully know the issue that we're discussing today, if my eyes work for me. Again, this is no secret to any of you, but obviously bobcats are a big part of Kiowa Island. Wildlife in general is one of the reasons people move here. We just talked to the mayor. He enlightened us on the fact that whereas golf used to be one of the main draws to Kiowa, and it still is, wildlife and the environment has certainly taken a front seat in that respect. And bobcats are a big part of that, as you well know. Other wildlife, but bobcats are one of the flagship species here at Kiowa. Very important to the people and to the island's ecology. Again, on a more personal note, a few years ago, Jim contacted me and some other folks in the area and described to us some of the issues he was having with bobcats on the island and their potential exposure to these rodenticides we call them SGAs, which stands for second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, which is why we call them SGAs. It's a mouthful. But these chemicals, in a nutshell, are designed to basically prevent blood clotting. And so animals, rats are the target species, but when these animals are exposed to these chemicals and they are injured or have some type of stress that causes them to bleed, the bleeding doesn't stop. They bleed to death. It's not a pleasant way to go, but it's an effective way to get to control rodents. But unfortunately, these chemicals also have the same effect on other wildlife as well. And there's a plethora of literature out there in the world that describes the exposure and mortality of birds of prey, other mammals, including bobcats, other mammals, and even some reptiles as well can fall victim to these chemicals if they're exposed. And so Jim, throughout his, 13 to 15 years of research on the island with bobcats, began to notice a decline in the population of the bobcats and a concurrent increase in the number one prey species, the white-tailed deer. And then after that, he began to find some of his collared bobcats that were dead, and he was able to get those animals analyzed and found that most of them, or all of them, had been exposed to these chemicals. It's pretty cut and dry. They were exposed, and their mortality was caused from exposure to these chemicals. So that's obviously a problem. Because as you know, on the one hand, you have these chemicals, and this is how they work basically. So if you can see the screen there on the left, you have the house, that's where we're all hanging out. living in, and you have these little bait boxes that contain the rodenticide. The rodent or the target species comes in, eats the bait. It doesn't kill it right away, but it takes a while for it to take effect. But as the rodent walks away from the house and goes somewhere to either to live or to possibly die, they're much easier to catch by these predators. So these predators like birds of prey, coyotes, raccoons, and even bobcats prey on these rats even when they're at full strength. When they're debilitated from these chemicals, they're even more easy to capture. So when these predators consume these rats, it's like they're getting a dose of the poison themselves. Not quite the same dose that the rat got, but they're still getting some of it in their body. And the more rats they eat, the higher the dose. And sometimes these chemicals get sequestered in their bodies, in their liver, for example. And they can live actually pretty well with these chemicals in their bodies until they either get too much of the chemical at one time, or if they have a stressful event, for example, a female bobcat giving birth to her live young, sometimes that's a traumatic experience for her. And you can imagine there's some bleeding involved in that. And if she has anticoagulants in her body, she may bleed to death. That actually happened once or twice here at Kiowa. So again, not a good situation. So the bottom line is, rats are exposed, predators feed on these rodents, and it can kill them. Dave, you want to jump in and discuss some of the objectives? Sure. I can certainly stand next to you, but
yeah. So what we did and what Clemson came to the table with was we met with Jim and we had conversations about how can Clemson help address this question in using our science expertise and resources at Clemson. And so we have 5 specific objectives that I'll try to go through fairly quickly here. And the first one is kind of building off what Jim has been doing for the past few years, is already looking at those SGA concentrations in the bobcats and looking at their behavior, because Jim is going out and placing GPS collars on them. We're going to continue doing that, and we're going to see how these different levels of concentrations based on the blood samples we get when we capture them are related to their movement behavior and maybe the patterns that occur in that. The other thing that's just, as a scientist, this is a really amazing place, is that because Jim has been doing this type of work for a decade, there's a lot of data. And I tell people this is probably one of the most well-studied bobcat populations in the world. And so you have a long database to dive back into to look at maybe what normal bobcat behavior was and what it is like now, and also looking at patterns in what we call demography, or basically life and death survival. And so we can use some of those historical data sets and look at that. We're going to be looking at diet, and the most common way that we do that with carnivores nowadays is using scat, and then there's genetic techniques to identify which scat that animal came from. So is it a bobcat scat, is it a fox scat? Sometimes you can't tell visually. But you can also identify it down to individual animal with genetics. And then we can also look at which species are within that scat. And then there's also laboratory ways to look at what level of rodenticides are in that scat. So we can kind of, rather than having to capture the animal and take blood, we can collect these scat samples over time and look at that accumulation or lack of accumulation and see where it's happening on the island. The fourth objective of the 5 is to monitor these other kind of mammals in between, or these mid-level carnivores, and seeing how they are being exposed and potentially a part of that chain of events of these coagulants leading to these bobcats. And like I mentioned before, this is a 3-year field project, and Megan will be here for 4 years of her dissertation work looking at this and writing up in her final year. And then we're going to be trying to do some rodent sampling itself. So looking at, on this schematic, looking at all these different levels that these rodenticides could come into the system. Of course, there's other chemicals that are being evaluated by companies and being used by companies now. And so we'll be able to hopefully track those different concentrations in the rodents themselves through trapping and surveying across the island and seeing if there are hot spots for exposure and so on. So some expected outcomes. Hopefully from all of this, we'll be able to provide some management guidelines, specifically as it relates to the rodenticides and their impact on bobcats and other wildlife. We're going to be providing some really unprecedented insights into the ecology of bobcats, using those data to look at areas where they're frequenting, areas where we might have concerns, develop some best practices for sustaining the bobcat and other populations of wildlife in relation to development on the island. And the last one here I think is really important in terms of, we're doing this research on Kiowa, There might be a paired study on with separate funding on a different island nearby, but that will be undeveloped. But Kiowa is the home of this research, and I think it could really be an important model for other island communities about how they manage this issue and manage the species. So Kiowa is kind of our testing ground, so to speak, but we're going to learn a lot as we go. And so the costs, I can talk through costs in detail. This is a collaborative project where we found funding from at least 4 or 5 institutions and not institutions, but partners already. And so we're well on our way. And this project is starting because we've already hired and brought on Megan. That was the first step to know we had enough money to do that. And then we'll also have some of these other things that we have to worry about in terms of housing, supplies and materials, travel, and so forth. But I'm happy to talk about that if there are questions. Oh, and here's a list of some of the partners that have already been dedicated to providing funding, and at least the top the town of Kiowa, Clemson, South Carolina Natural Resources are already key partners in that we're identifying, and we're working with others to go through that. Anything I've left off?
I'll do the last slide. That's probably the next step. We're well on our way. As you know, we got Megan. We had a national search for her. I don't want to blow her head up too much, but we're very fortunate to have her here. And I think she brings skills not only as a scientist, but as a good communicator to keep the community informed and engaged. So we're happy to have her here. And then there'll be, we're hoping to have a website up where real information can be obtained about what the project's doing, where it is. And then this is the support we've gotten so far, and we're well on our way, like David said, to securing the rest of the funding. And then Jim's Bobcat waiting. That's Jim's.
That was great.
Questions? I just want to thank you all for coming down. I had a chance to meet everybody, meet Megan beforehand. I've shared with them, I think was mentioned at the very beginning, you know, the environment is of just extraordinary importance for our island, why we live here, why people want to come to Kiowa. And I just think this is a very appropriate time to be doing this study. We do have concerns relative to this whole issue and survival of our bobcats and all that come along, you know, that come along with it. So thank you, Jim, for your continued wisdom and leadership in this whole area. So, and we get sweatshirts or T-shirts that say Clemson on it. We'll look forward to them. Okay, anything else?
Clemson Bobcats.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Dr. Rainwater also helped us a couple of years ago on alligator research.
Very good. Old business. We have one point of old business, which is the second and final reading of ordinance 2021-09. I think we had a long discussion about this a month ago. So could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second? Second. Any final comments, thoughts, questions relative to this ordinance?
I have a question. Did we get the salary study back?
Yes.
For the employees?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still working on that. We got a draft.
Okay, if there's nothing relative to this ordinance 2021-09, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, new business. CARTA. Anybody here from CARTA? Oh, yes, sir. Do you have some comments you wish to make?
Yes,
Yeah.
Perfect,
please.
perfect.
Thanks.
I'll be brief, not a ton of comments. First of all, thank you for having us today. Appreciate it, and I'm here because all of the municipalities represented on the Carter board, we are required to come out and talk to you guys a little bit about our budget for the year. A familiar face of Ms. Tillerson there. How you doing?
Doing well.
Making the
How are you,
return
Daniel?
trip. Yeah, this time. So, not much has changed with the Carter budget this year. You guys have a narrative and a breakdown of that there. The biggest change was an additional funding source from the county of $2 million of already allocated sales tax funding. It was just released a little bit earlier, and what that allowed us to do was take that $2 million, which would have been able to purchase 3 battery electric buses, and end up purchasing 24.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am, with matching federal funds. What that's also going to do is take us through a completion of a total replacement of the fleet, which had, when the BCD cog, who I work for, took over administration of CARTA, had been the oldest fleet of its type in the nation. We've had about a $40 million capital replacement program, funded largely through competitive grants over the last 5 years, and have been able to move the fleet forward, replacing all of our downtown area shuttle buses, all of our paratransit buses, all of our express buses, and now we're working on the local buses as well. So that is really the big change there. Otherwise,
I'm sorry, could you pause it?
Yeah.
So, say that again, your entire fleet will be electric?
that's where we're heading. Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir. So we have 6 electric vehicles on the road now, and we have nearly 24 more in the pipeline for those. And we're working towards moving the entire fleet that way.
How many buses are there in the entire fleet?
There are a total of vehicle-wise, and this includes some vans and some paratransit, about 115.
Thank you.
So we're heading that way. But that's a lower number for the actual buses themselves. But yes, so that is where we're at this time, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you guys have about the budget coming up.
Do you have multiple charging stations, or how many charging?
We do. We've got 3 right now at the Carta Bus Yard on Leeds Avenue, but we are also doing an electric bus master plan, which is going to take a look at where these need to be regionally, and specifically along the Low Country Rapid Transit line, which you guys may be familiar with. That's going to run from the Fairground and Ladson down to West Edge in downtown Charleston, about 21 miles of bus rapid transit. The majority of that's going to run in dedicated, separated lanes, so it's going to be essentially light rail on wheels. The big update there is we just completed 30% design and received FTA approval for our environmental document. So later this year, we're going to submit that to move into the engineering phase. Once we get through that, we will move to construction, and hoping that will be in 2023. And I will say, it's not CARTA overseen, but related to transit. The COG has recently acquired about a dozen vans, both 7-passenger and 15-passenger. So we are reaching out to the Kiowa Resort to see if there is some appetite and what we might be able to do in terms of a van pool for employees heading out that way.
That's a great idea.
So that's in progress right now.
Very nice.
Any other questions, comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item,
I think we need a motion to approve. You have to approve the
oh,
budget.
excuse me. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
You're official. Our next is the appointment of Kristin Thompson as to the membership of our Arts and Cultural Events Council. Kristin's bio is attached. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
I so moved.
Second? Any discussion?
I would say that Kristin is going to be a very nice addition to the Arts Council. She has extensive background in fundraising as well as working for large organizations. And she was Director of Communications for Thompson Management Association. And she comes highly recommended. So I support the recommendation.
Wonderful. Did we take a motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there someone here from the Conservancy to talk about the integrated watershed study?
Lee.
Lee, welcome, Lee.
Hello, everyone. I am the Senior Ecological Health and Conservation Coordinator with the Kiowa Conservancy. And thank you, Council, for allowing me the opportunity to present this project today. I'm very excited to talk about it. So I'll kind of go into a brief discussion for everybody who may not be familiar with this. Since 2018, there has been discussions about flooding, sea level rise, and some other environmental concerns on the island. The town's environmental committee has put out a sea level rise report. We've had a wonderful thesis, dissertation from Lucas Hernandez looking at watersheds in Kiowa. And we also have been putting forth through several projects to the Conservancy to look at groundwater as well as the vulnerability of our marshes. So resilience is definitely a topic that we're looking into in the region. And I know the town and Kika and the Conservancy are very concerned about that. So we're looking further into this and looking into monitoring efforts to better inform us of our conditions on the island. And so far we've gathered a lot of information, but we see that there is another step going forward that would help fill some of those gaps and actually bring everything together to allow us to better understand our environment. So every year the town provides or allocates some funds set aside for these types of projects. This year we had about $50,000 available for proposing to the town to receive for. So the proposal here looks into $50,000 for several different things, and mostly is focused on the vulnerability of our marshes, looking at the water quality going in there. So buying some YSI XO probes, and then deploying those into the estuary environment to start gathering some information about water quality as it relates to some of the water quality coming in from the outflows from the stormwater ponds. So what this will give us is information about water depth, how it changes, turbidity, how it's changing, and basically how it's affecting the wildlife within the estuary marshes as well as the fisheries. What we're also concerned about is looking at how water flows in and out of the island. As I mentioned before, Lucas Hernandez did a wonderful thesis project on looking at how watersheds on Kiowa Island move water around based on scenarios. And we've been able to gather information about rainfall on the island as well as groundwater to inform us about how that moves. And one of the things that we need to look into is these general watersheds that allow us to look at how water basically moves in these areas and is discharged. So kind of coming up with a water budget, how water is inputted and how it's output into the marsh. We've learned quite a significant amount about how water moves on the island, but I think putting it all together in sort of a way to look at what is the net flow of the water is important. So what we're looking at is deploying a method to establish different weather stations throughout Kiowa Island to get some of the information within these watersheds, looking at things like rainfall accumulation and how it collects in these areas, as well as how things like relative humidity, soil radiation sort of input into this budget. And what we get from this is a better picture of how water moves in and out of the island, whether or not it be from climate or it just be from natural hydrological processes. So what we're doing is we're deploying a water budget algorithm that was generated through efforts in the ACE Basin by Dr. Timothy Callahan, Ms. Kasabian, who worked on a thesis project with this, as well as Sandra Upchurch with the ACE Basin. They developed a set of algorithms to work through and calculations to look at water budgets. And we're planning on to do using these within these sort of smaller watersheds within Kiowa Island to look at how much water goes into those watersheds and how much is discharged. So the funds would be used to purchase weather stations as well as different water quality monitoring equipment. And several funds set aside are going to be used for either getting a student to work with us from the College of Charleston, or potentially contracting with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources to expand monitoring efforts to look at water quality, specifically looking at things like how algae, dissolved oxygen, and other things within the aquatic environment, specifically within the marshes, are kind of contribute to the overall ecological health of Kiowa Island. So that's the general outline of the report. And I think a lot of this has culminated from discussions not only within the Conservancy, but also with folks at the town and KICA and within the town's environmental committee. So we've had a lot of input into this, and we've received a lot of feedback from everybody. And I think so far all of our partners are really interested in working on this, and I think the partnerships are going to be very beneficial to looking into improving the resilience of Keel Island.
I think 13 stations is interesting simply because, at least I find, I'm sure all the residents do, that the difference between west and east can be dramatic at times. And rainfall might be 2 inches at one spot and literally nothing at another spot. So 13 ought to cover it. I think that's a great way to do it. Good for you. Sorry, Steph.
Oh, no, sorry.
Lee, you have roughly 36 of the $50,000 is for equipment. You have a listing here for optional equipment consideration. Are you trying to obtain funding for that?
So yeah, that's a great question. So the probes that you can get, you can be outfitted with these sondes that you can insert into the probe and use and deploy in the field. You can also exchange them with other things, so you can buy probes separately, so you can monitor different things later on, such as fluorescent dissolved organic matter, things like chlorophyll, and what you can do is you can exchange them every time. But we're looking at more general parameters. For now, we're looking at things like turbidity, dissolved oxygen, temperature, conductivity, things that will give us a better glimpse of the water quality and seeing how it compares to everywhere. It's more of if we had decided it in the future to deploy different monitoring efforts, we would have that as an option. But that's just as a reference, but not necessarily something we're going to buy currently.
That's a dumb question. This equipment, is it the technology? Is it like stuff? Will you be able to maintain it? Do you have the physical capacity and the technical capacity to be able to maintain these things?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to be partnering with the College of Charleston to help us get familiar with how to deploy these and also how to make sure we clean them up. We've been talking with folks at DNR at Fort Johnson, looking at how they monitor things in the ACE Basin. We're planning to reach out to them so we can figure out how they have been able to clean their equipment, because they biofouls every month or so. So you actually have to go out there, clean the equipment, calibrate it, and then deploy it back out the field. But usually they have standard operating procedures that come with that and have documentation online. So I think a combination of doing our research beforehand before we deploy, as well as reaching out to our partners at the state government to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments?
No. Mr. Mayor, may I just ask a question of Lee? Just for my understanding, with regards to the weather stations, how would this work with the wind station that we have on Timbers? And I know we have our tide station there at the bridge, and I know KICA also has a couple of maybe wind stations, or I'm not sure what they have, but how are these different or all connected?
So yeah, they're all connected. So the stations that are deployed on Timbers, it's the Davis Vantage Pro, and we're looking to purchase the same ones. And generally, I think we're looking at just how the microclimates vary across these areas. So I think the information gathered from them will be very similar, if not the same, in regards to the accuracy and precision. But generally, we're just trying to look at how it varies across different distances. We're working with some folks at Xylem. They're based out of Columbia, and they actually installed the Kiowa River Bridge tide station. And there is the option of potentially putting a weather station on there to gather wind speed, which is very important for looking at fetch and storm surge. But I think that it was pretty expensive. So
where would the two go? Where are you guys proposing to put these two?
There was, we're still looking into it, but it was discussed potentially putting one in the center of the island, probably looking at some resort property. There's also the potential to put it on the fire station on the eastern end of the island, where Governor's Drive and Mission Course meet. So those are the two locations we're looking at now, but we're still open to other opportunities.
And I guess you're working with College of Charleston, because once this data, is this data available public? Is it going to be like, for instance, our data is on our website. Is this available on the website so anyone can look at it, or is this just something that you guys are collecting, and then who would College of Charleston or someone would be able to go through that data and make sense of it or what to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be sent to the same website to be
Okay.
provided. And I guess we can work on making it publicly available. I'm certainly, that's my intention so that people are well informed. But yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And Mayor, I just wanted to let you know that this recommendation comes from the Environmental Committee.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee.
A question, who owns this equipment? How does this work? Does the Conservancy bill us and we invoice us and we pass the monies to the Conservancy? Are we buying this equipment? How?
The equipment for you all.
Yeah, so there's two methods for this, and this has been discussed a little bit. And usually what would happen is we would purchase it and get a reimbursement for the purchases.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're effectively, you're buying it, you're responsible for it and the others, and we're reimbursing
Right.
based on, okay, all right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we have a request for $50,000. The detail is on page 7 in terms of how it is broken up. Do I have a motion to approve, please?
I so moved.
Second? Any other comments? How many years have we done this in terms of supporting the Conservancy? Do you recall?
Oh, a number of years. This new process that we're going through probably changed within the last 4 or 5 years, but we've been funding the Conservancy
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah, okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, good job. Is Lauren here?
Jim is going to speak on the dolphin program.
This is under tab 6. I'm sorry, I should have moved on.
And then
All
we'll
right,
speak
thank
out
you all.
later.
So I'm not going to spend too much time going over this proposal. We talked about it some during the budget process. This is a program that the town has supported. I think this is the 4th year now. And effectively what the program does is it provides trained educators down at Captain Sam Spit to educate beachgoers, visitors, etc. about dolphin behavior, make sure they're abiding by federal guidelines, not getting too close to the dolphins and interrupting their strand feeding. It also involves some weekly observations by a professional or by Lauren, who's the head of this organization running this, where she's documenting, the individual dolphins that are strand feeding, taking pictures of their fins and feeding that into a database to identify the dolphins. So again, this is I think it's the 4th year, and just looking to continue that program for another fiscal year. So this would provide funding from July 1st of this year until June 30 of next year. And the total cost is just under $9,000, and it is budgeted.
I move that we accept this for discussion.
Sure, is there a second?
This issue came up with the last council, and I just had a question. Why is it separated out from the rest of your budget?
Why is the dolphin?
Right.
Well, it's in a separate line item.
It
so it's
is.
in the environmental, I think we call it environmental programs line item,
Okay.
which includes, a variety of basically outside environmental projects that aren't run by town staff.
Right.
So it's,
Okay, I would say it's pretty effective. I've been over, if you ever go to Captain Sam's Spit, you go during the day, usually around 2 or 3 o'clock. There are usually 2 people there who can help you with information on the dolphins. The last time I was there was a man who had a small boat who rowed it right up to where the dolphins strand feed. And because they were there, they were able to get him to move. Many visitors go to see the dolphin strand feeding. And I think it's a very important environmental program for us to support on Kiowa. And are there only very few strand feeding places for dolphins?
yeah, I mean, it is a fairly unusual activity. It does happen throughout the Charleston area and down to Georgia, the northern part of the Georgia coast, but that's pretty much it. So it's a very unique local behavior of dolphins.
Thank you.
Jim, the data that Lauren gathers, are there reports that are published? Do those come to the environmental committee?
They
Or
do. So we get an annual report.
Okay. I did see her annual report, yes,
Yeah, and then also, as I mentioned, you know, when she's taking photos of the dorsal fins of these dolphins, that's going into a larger database, which also produces reports on, you know, for example, for an individual dolphin, you know, all the resightings over the 20 or 25 years that dolphin has been seen. And
So there's scientific data besides it?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, Jim?
All I have.
Thank you, Jim.
I guess that was a motion to approve, Mary Ann?
Yes.
What, $9,000?
It's just, yeah, it's just under.
87. How is this handled? Are we billed? We're billed, Lauren does.
And, yeah,
Misbudgeted.
yes, it's budgeted.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And new communication assets. Oh, okay.
Yes, I was wondering who was going to-
Okay, well, for those of you in the audience that don't know me, I'm Stephanie Braswell, the town's communication manager, and I am here to report on what I'm excited to say is the final version of the ISO app that we'll be releasing this week, actually tomorrow.
Congratulations.
This is not obviously the first time you've seen it, council, but we've made some significant changes since then, so I just wanted to run through a quick demo of where the changes that we made. So as you can see, the top, this is our home screen, and the top left-hand corner provides the high tide time and weather, and then this is the, again, you have it on your DS2 in front of you. This is our home screen and information screen that provides a brief intro to the island, as well as regulations for our beach and other island regulations that is just kind of a consolidated list of do's and don'ts for the public. And then we have 3 rows essentially for people to easily access the information they're looking for. The first popular row will take you to our beach map, and it has GPS capabilities. It also has all the boardwalks labeled, as well as the dog leash areas, an overlay for that. And if you tap the label, it will pull up what is allowed in that specific area on the map. So I'm hoping that residents and visitors will find that helpful when they're utilizing the beach. Some of the other areas is the dog use area, the bird nesting area, and the critical habitat areas. And the second one is the need to know. It takes you back to that information screen that has the consolidated lists of do's and don'ts. And then this has quick access to our wildlife directory, which, as we all know, people are very interested in. And then the second line is actually one of the major changes. Is we changed it to be resources, and this contact list is a consolidated contact directory for pretty much anyone on the island that you would need to get a hold of, and it has tap to communicate capabilities. So if I tap to communicate there, I just call that number directly from the app.
That's great.
And then also this report and issue portal I'm gonna run through a quick demo for you to see how this will operate, but let's say that, someone needed to report a nuisance alligator to Jim. They would go to, they would find their issue, obviously, but we're gonna use alligator for this. You can pin your location, or you can enter in your address, or whatever the address is. And then they fill out this short little form. They can add a photo. Actually, if they've already taken it, they can add this.
Wow. Pretty slick.
Then, you just fill out the information. These fields are required, so that the person and the appropriate party that is receiving the information will have someone to follow up with if they need to. And it does take a minute to submit depending on your Wi-Fi. And then they get a screen that pops up that lets them know your issue's been reported to the appropriate party, and that if any information is needed, they'll be contacted. So it doesn't set the expectation that they'll be contacted, but at least the end user has the information of who is reporting it.
So the code officials are in this list?
They are. And I kind of see this as our jumping off point. We can always add issues if we need to. They just have to have an email address to attach the report to. So, and then actually the end user, so I will get an email to my email that says that I've a confirmation that it's gone through, and then the person that needs to follow up on the issue will get it as well. And as you can see, there's some things in here that the town actually doesn't handle. For instance, like
Injured wildlife?
right, well, we do handle that. Well, sometimes like a broken sprinkler head, that goes to Kika, and they're a person that.
Is it Kiko KIU for broken sprinkler? Would it be the?
Well, this one in particular with the residential areas, Will Connor wanted it to come to him so that he would be able to identify where it was at and then handle it. And that has kind of been the driving force behind this, is that we're just gonna get it to where it needs to go, whether or not we handle it or not. Since it's being reported in the field and people are walking or biking and they see something, they can just report it easily, and it's reported to someone who has a means of getting it to who it needs to be. But most of the issues are gonna go straight to the person that handles that, or it's within their wheelhouse.
Stephanie, is there if somebody has an issue but just can't find a bucket to put it in?
Like a catch-all? No, but we could definitely enter in. I can add one. This is something that we can build.
Yeah, I
on.
just was looking at it, I don't know.
Something we hadn't thought about,
Maybe
sure.
everything would fall in at that.
Absolutely. And then the third one on this panel, this just takes you to In the News. It is our app. I'd love to bring it to people that this is our section of the website where we post our latest news, so that people can easily access that page. And then the second part is really more about hospitality. And so it provides the stay, explore events, the stay and play. It provides I'm calling it a hospitality directory, where it has options for lodging, dining, recreation, shopping, and health and wellness. One of the things that's neat is that, if you want to go to the ocean room or you want to get information, they can just tap to communicate to that restaurant or shop or merchant or whatever it is that is within the directory. And then the only other thing that I wanted to show you is that it actually has events, our events page in there. People are looking for Arts Council events. And it does have the capability, which I have not yet activated because I wanted to roll it out first, for push notifications, which comes in handy in an emergency operations, where it would be sent directly to their phone and pop up on their home screen. So,
Terrific.
yes.
That is really good and simple.
And Stephanie, one thing, is this still right now only available to iPhone users, not Android, or?
That's correct. So
So-
it's an
Oh.
iOS app, which is highly favored in this demographic, for one, for sure, in this financial demographic, but also the Android version is halfway built through, but they are going to have to, I'm going to have to come back to ask for a little bit more money in regards to finish that part out, because they're truly building 2 wireframes for that. So,
So how will we publicize this to
So-
people that are visiting the island, for example? How will they know that there's a Kiowa?
well, that's gonna be part of me rolling that out. It was obviously supposed to be a little bit earlier so that I could roll it out this summer. But, one, just for introductory, I have a press release that's going out tomorrow. The announcement will be made to the community, and then I'm gonna be working with our community partners to help reinforce and the availability of it, and having people, our other entities, the community association, ask people to use it as a resource. And then I'll have to build further upon for the tourist market, and I'll be able to do that more aggressively next season.
Looks great.
Thank you.
Really nice.
Nice job.
Is that dog, is this a corgi or is this a border collie?
That is a corgi, and that is
That's a
Olive the
relative?
corgi. It's actually Keely's dog.
That's what I
She
thought.
was our model.
It was a relative.
She was, yes. So, and she has her own Instagram page if you want
Well,
to follow
it was
her.
very,
So.
very sweet.
So, and
Nice.
then, in the information that's going out tomorrow to the community, there is a section that says, I'd really like for people to provide feedback. I wanna know what the end user's experience is, so that they can contact me directly to provide feedback.
I love the push screen wall feature. That's awesome.
I know, I really like that. I think that that's gonna be one thing for residents that's really easy. Just download the app. If you use it for nothing more than that, that's an excellent way to just have everything there you need
Well,
instead of
they're
having to
calling
look up your
about
contacts.
towels on the
Right.
hanging towels.
Right, right,
They just push the button.
right. So, does anybody have any questions regarding that?
Looks great.
Great.
This confusion that people will comment on, they don't know which, the town and the community association. When you work with your colleague from the community association, do these two parallel one another or link to one another? Or, I see community association is listed there.
That's correct.
I don't know, just thinking, is there a way to make that easier? Is there any way to facilitate that? And that's the other thing, is community association. A lot of people, most people think of it as KICA.
That's correct.
You
And I
wanna-
can change that label today.
Yeah.
I've got some flexibility on my end, on the back end, on what I can change, and then some of it has to be HTML code, so.
I don't want it to encumber anybody. You want to make it easier for people.
Sure.
I don't know. Does the associate, they have one also, a website, or, not a, what, this is
They
an app?
used to have an app, but they did away with it because I actually think they're going to be moving forward with a new one as well.
Oh,
It's my
all right, well,
understanding.
anyway, just, it isn't that confusing, but I don't know. I hear that said, I don't know which way to turn.
When you say that, do you mean like there might be a need to have maybe a button that has the entities that you can get to their website versus like a contact list like this where it's actually, you're tapping to call the,
I don't know, Steph, I'm just commenting,
throwing it out there, yeah.
anything to make it easier for people that visiting, calling in, writing in, looking in on our website, make sure they get to the right site,
Place,
right, it's the right
yes.
place.
And that's definitely something that we will keep in mind when we're doing our new website, is making sure that that's a part of it.
Okey-doke.
But if you have any additional feedback or you think of anything else, please feel free to shoot me an email or call me.
Well done, Stephanie, well done.
Nice job. Thank you,
Thank you.
Stephanie.
We're live tomorrow, Steph?
It's actually live right now, but I'm announcing it tomorrow, but it's fine.
Tomorrow's
Yes.
the rollout.
Tomorrow's the rollout, that's right.
Okay, that's our new business. Stephanie, town administrator's report?
We have Brian give us an update on some public works projects. Thank you, Clemson.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Clemson.
Bye.
Megan, good luck to you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, with that, since they were gonna be here.
Pretty appropriate. Okay, good afternoon. A couple updates on some of the open projects that we've got. I guess first I'll start with, so Beachwalker Drive has a little bit of compromised integrity in the road. Basically, there was a pipe that has a leak in it that led to some sinkholes on Beachwalker Drive. Got a little bit worse, so I was able to expedite this getting fixed. I've got new pipe coming out tomorrow. They're gonna re-sleeve that, and it's only gonna be a day's worth of work. So they'll be able to get that squared away tomorrow, so that there's not a threat of any more popping up in that area. And then following right behind them is I was recommended a contractor that's gonna come do the backfill and patching, because new pipe just does the pipes. They won't patch the road. So coming right behind them, we'll have the road patched up, and I think that might be a Thursday morning. They might not be getting out there until about 5 or 6 o'clock tomorrow. So that's gonna be mitigated tomorrow in its entirety by Thursday morning. Yes, ma'am.
Question. How do the people that are going to the county park get in?
They're gonna leave traffic open.
There's
They're if they even have to do any closures.
I haven't gone over and seen it, so I don't know.
I confirmed with them just today that there will still be traffic that can move in and out. If they do anything, it'll just be a 1 lane at a time.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anything else about Beachwalker Drive? I think we're gonna be good. We got some, also the lights at the signs. I have moved to a new electrician. We weren't getting as much progress as quickly as we had hoped with the one. So I've got the company that does our Christmas lights. They do exterior lighting as well. They're electrician. So he has told me that he's going to be out this week, and he's familiar with that island already, as he's put lights in for the holidays, and he installed new lights on the sign before we knew that there wasn't that much power getting over to that island. So he's very familiar with that area already. He thinks that he can have it ready, good to go on Friday. Won't know for sure until he gets under there, but I feel a little bit better after talking to him about how he will I feel like a priority with him. And again, he's done a lot of business for us and on the island as well. So I'll send out an email to everybody once I get a concrete update from him. Again, he's hoping that it'll be fixed on Friday.
I thought we were supposed to have something on the agenda regarding the lights.
That's what he's talking about now.
Is there something for a budget item? No?
No, right now, that's what he's talking about, what we're gonna do with the
Okay.
lights. And then,
Thank you.
And then also the new signs, those are gonna be ready. I'm gonna have some bids to bring back to the Ways and Means Committee this month. Again, I think I gave an update to you guys last Monday, but those are gonna be going out. Sending them out to the same companies that I did before, as well as a handful of other companies that are local. So hopefully we get some good competitive pricing back, and not being on the time crunch that we were with last time. I'm hoping to get some good numbers that aren't inclusive of any expedited fees or moving up top priority or anything like that. So I'm gonna have for the big sign by the main gate, and also the smaller sign just outside of the roundabout. Those bids will be coming back, presented to you all at Ways and Means at the end of this month.
Great.
Good.
And then the recycle center at Kestrel Court, we've made some progress. We have a couple of different design layouts that the architect has given us. Right now, he has taken those to Carolina Waste, just to make sure from an operations standpoint that trucks can make these radiuses and we can have a smooth operation from Carolina Waste standpoint. There is one in there that I'm particularly excited about that looks like it's going to be really conducive with minimal impact to vegetation in that area. But what it's also going to do is not only make it more ergonomic to move in and out of there from a user standpoint and a cleanup standpoint, but it's going to increase capacity over there at the center as well. So we're pretty confident that this is going to help take care of a lot of the issues that we've seen over at the site.
Did we have to lease new land to do it, or we gonna send?
We'll have to extend a little bit, not much, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. But once we get word from what looks good to Carolina Waste, then we'll be able to go back to KIU and ask if this is okay with them.
And then we see something.
As soon as we should hear back from Carolina Waste about how that's going to work for them operationally this week. He sent it out to them last week, I believe. So as soon as we hear back from them, we'll be able to move forward with the design that we would like, and we'll present those to you all before we move forward.
Okay. Great.
Many, if not most, of these issues fall in your bailiwick, Brian. And kind of hate to always keep putting pressure on you. You know, what's the status? What's the status? It gets back to overall communication. Issues come up. They come up from the community. We give them a report. We say we're working on something. Time goes by. People forget. Whatever happened to old such and so? And you know, it's kind of an ongoing type of thing. I don't have an answer to it, but you know, Stephanie, how we have events, or what was one of your buttons, news or something?
Or news?
Is that what the button was on the phone, on the app? You know, in some way or another, to be able to give the community, the residents, you know, full-fledged, bona fide status reports. I mean, you know, it's not a matter that everything has to be done. It's just status. People just want to know whatever happened to this, you know.
And I agree, and you know, there is some
So
difficulties sometimes with, there's time in between council meetings that,
Yeah.
you know, but I think that's a good idea, a good intermediate way to be able to say, you know, put things out to the community, not necessarily before we push it out to you all
No,
at a meeting, but I think that's,
concurrent with that or whatever. I mean, I just understand. I get asked and then I say, I
No.
think I remember that. And I ask Stephanie and you know, it's just time just goes by and anyway, okay,
Yes,
good.
sir.
That'll be helpful.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't mean to preclude people from asking. That's clearly their right, responsibility, and our responsibility to be able to respond. But sometimes people don't want to ask, and they get a certain amount of they get frustrated because they haven't seen anything.
And I understand that
So,
completely.
okay, Brian, thank you.
Yes, sir.
These guys in this parkway, Brian, they do a great job. They're out there all the time,
Glad to hear. We're happy with them too. So
I mean,
glad to
just-
hear from them.
doing all kinds of stuff. It's great. So,
I have no other updates.
anything
Mayor.
else?
That's it.
Committee updates, Dan?
No, the only thing I'll mention is Mr. Taylor, who's with us, and a variety of people, including our farmer, are all active in the roads issue and trying to move that ball along and do it in concert with our neighbors at Seabrook and Jones Island. I commend them for their ongoing efforts on a tough problem. That's it.
And we commend you, Dan, for pushing this forward. So,
Mary Ann? Thank you, Mayor. For public safety, the firehouse on Cuba Island Parkway is almost completed. They still had some paving to do, and it's anticipated that within the next couple of months they'll have an open house. If you have the opportunity to go, I would certainly recommend it. It's amazing. The other firehouse has so much equipment, and you're prepared to do so many different things. It's just it facilitates their work tremendously, and they do have good food.
good.
Okay.
Is that Monday through Friday? I hope I can just stop in anytime. and get
No,
lunch.
just the day of the open house.
Oh,
Okay, the auditing committee met a couple of weeks ago, and we're preparing for our next meeting on October 7th. And at that time, we'll be meeting with the auditors and going over the steps for our process.
Is there a policy in terms of the frequency that the auditors, we sent an RFP for,
We don't have a cast in concrete, but this auditor has been here 3 years, I believe. This is their third year.
so there's not a policy that says how often we do that? Is that,
It's an unwritten policy for municipalities and counties to relook at, putting out an RFP every 3 to 5 years. You can select the same, potentially the
Oh,
same
sure,
auditor
sure.
can get it, but ideally you're looking at costs and different things. So it's kind of like an unwritten rule by municipalities and counties to do that every
Right.
3 to 5 years.
And I think the way they look at it is the first year they're getting to know you, the second
No.
year, they're much more familiar, it's easier to do,
Yeah.
and by the third year, it should be very much easier. Okay. One other thing that I have been working on is the dog leash issues. And I bring this up with some trepidation because it's the worst job I've ever had. We had a small committee working on leash dogs versus unleashed dogs, and we met a few times. We came up with some recommendations. I brought them up at Public Safety a few weeks ago, and to say that they were shot down isn't even truly representing the response that I got. I am going to bring it up again at the next meeting in September because only one person is there on the committee, so I want to give it a fair start. But we are looking at enforcing the dog requirements.
you brought up recommendations to change it, or what?
To add two or three things to it, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. There's been complaints about dogs
Yeah.
jumping up on you,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
they've had one dog attacks another dog, things like that. But, I guess a general plea was please enforce
existing.
the ordinance, so that's what we're gonna be doing. And we'll have a little trial between now and September and see how it goes. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Mary. John?
So we have a Public Works Committee meeting on Monday at 10, and we've asked Berkeley to send a representative sort of as our update, periodic update. If you recall, we had quite a discussion back in December when we had the power outage because of the substation being offline, and we asked them to kind of report on a regular basis. We've had a couple of residents express some concerns about power outages and so forth, and so we want to first off get Berkeley's point of view on where they are with outages and what causes them and how extensive they've been and that sort of thing. But more importantly, to set the stage for how residences and visitors can report power outages and possibly it's something that we could put on the app. I know she had Berkeley on there, but there's so that's Monday at 10. And they'll have at least one person here. I'm not sure who's
They're gonna have he's gonna bring, one or two engineers
Okay,
that
so-
really know
So they
the
should be able to
island.
answer almost any question anybody has if you want to attend that meeting. You'll be in here.
Great.
Hopefully it'll be more than look at our website,
Well, and it is now. I mean, it's just that I don't think generally people know how to report
Sure.
and
Yeah.
look for
Sure.
things. Like if
You're
you look
right.
at their outage map at any time of the day, and you tell you exactly how many people have power outages and where they are. It's very simple, but it's not necessarily very well communicated.
Any other comments, citizen comments, anything?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. The Kiowa Goes Greener ad hoc committee, or ad hoc working group comprised of the major institutional entities on the island met for their second meeting on Wednesday, July 20th, sorry. Representatives from the town, community association, resort club, and conservancy were there. They shared their current status regarding eco-friendly activities and first steps and ideas that each organization believes it can achieve over time. The underlying philosophy is to have a multi-year, reasonable, achievable plan to reduce the island's carbon footprint as a whole and adopt other eco-friendly initiatives to their daily operations. As each organization reported on current practices and future areas they are willing to explore, it was clear that many practices already in place were unknown to others. There was a lively discussion as the work group explored new ideas. The topics discussed were transitioning utility vehicles to electric from gas, the use of electric motors on green mowers to raise and lower equipment rather than hydraulic means, installing water stations on some golf courses and eliminating water bottles to the extent possible, transitioning light bulbs to LED, exploring the use of solar panels where allowed by the ARB to power up the increased electric usage, looking to put more EV charging stations around the island for guests to use. Lucas Hernandez with KICA is working on a baseline carbon footprint using an EPA calculator. In addition, we will develop proxy measures for our success, such as percentage reduction in fossil fuel use from baseline years, etc. KICA will beta test out battery-operated, powered, commercial landscaping equipment for a period of time and see if the current market is durable enough and has sufficient battery life to make it viable alternative to the two-cycle gas power blowers, edgers, etc. In September, we are meeting again to begin to craft an aspirational scope of practice document with more detailed commitments and timelines. After that, we will put together a more comprehensive communication and send it to residents.
Thank you, Stephanie, on behalf of Dr. Parker. Hey, Steph, could you make sure that Scott knows about the Carter report, the vehicles that are going public? That's quite electric. That's quite a statement. Any citizen comments? Yes, sir. Oh, absolutely.
I want to quote the Bobcat study initiative but I was surprised.
I'm sorry, you have to state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Alex Fernandez.
And your address.
418 Small
I have a picture.
I know. Yes, please.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
We'd put anybody through this.
Sorry,
Alex.
I know.
I'm not, you guys are.
We know Wendy's address, but she had to say it every
That's
time
okay,
she
that's okay,
spoke.
that's fine.
Right.
No, I applaud the Bobcat initiative, the study initiative, but I was surprised not to see KICA as one of the partners. I mean, I think that KICA could play a role in being a partner in that study.
Yeah,
I mean,
Shannon's-
our residents are critical piece of the cause of this.
Shannon is aware she was at a conservancy meeting, and they asked Kika, and it's my understanding that Shannon was going to bring this discussion to the board, to your board.
Okay, so it's on its way.
Yes, sir.
We go.
Good, Alex. Thank you very much. So you've been officially recorded now, so. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.